Early bird registration is now open for Fertility Awareness Mastery Live, and I know you'll love this program. Fertility Awareness Mastery is my 8-week group coaching program designed to help you gain confidence using fertility awareness. Whether you're actively avoiding pregnancy or looking to optimize your cycles for conception, we have a spot for you. We start the first week of May. Will you be joining us? Head over to fertilityfriday.com/FAM, as in Fertility Awareness Mastery, FAM, to register today. That's fertilityfriday.com/FAM. This episode is brought to you by the Fertility Awareness Mastery Charting Workbook, the first beautifully designed, fully customizable paper charting workbook designed with you in mind. With 3 years worth of charting pages, the Fertility Awareness Mastery Charting Workbook has you covered. If you've been looking for a solid alternative to charting apps, you'll love this charting workbook. The Fertility Awareness Mastery Charting Workbook is available in both Fahrenheit and Celsius editions, and it's available in spiral-bound, paperback, and ebook versions. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/workbook to order your copy today. That's fertilityfriday.com/workbook. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 304. Welcome to the Fertility Friday podcast, your source for information about the Fertility Awareness Method and all things fertility. I'm your host, Lisa Hendrickson-Jack. I'm the author of The Fifth Vital Sign and the Fertility Awareness Mastery Charting Journal. I'm a certified fertility awareness educator and holistic reproductive health practitioner with nearly 20 years of experience teaching women to connect to their fifth vital sign through menstrual cycle charting, balancing hormonal health, and optimizing the menstrual cycle without hormones. I'm outspoken about hormonal birth control and its impact on fertility and overall health because you have the right to know how your body works and how artificial hormones disrupt that natural process. I host live coaching programs to help you achieve optimal fertility and health because it's important to have healthy menstrual cycles regardless of whether or not you want to have babies. I'm also a wife and mother of 2 beautiful boys. I know, I'm a busy girl, but I managed to fit it all in. This podcast is designed to empower you to take full control of your cycles, your fertility, and your overall health. And I'm so excited that you're here with us today. Today, I'm sharing a new installment of my Fertility Awareness Reality Series. I'm interviewing Angie, who is a current member of my Fertility Awareness Mastery Live group program. And in today's episode, we talk about some of the challenges that Angie faced when she was younger. So, like many women, she struggled with painful, heavy periods and was told that there was nothing she could do. And so I know that you'll appreciate her story. I always hear from my clients that these are some of their favorite episodes, and I really love having the opportunity to showcase real women's stories so that we can really start to normalize some of the experiences that we have and just learn from each other. If you're listening to this episode in real time, early bird registration actually closes for Fertility Awareness Mastery today. So make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/FAM, FAM, to join us at the early bird rate. So again, that's fertilityfriday.com/FAM. So without further ado, let's jump into today's episode with Angie. And I'm excited to be here today with Angie. Angie is a member of my current Fertility Awareness Mastery group program. And at this point, we've had a few sessions together. We're almost midway through our program together. And so without further ado, welcome to the show, Angie.
Hello, thank you. Nice to have me.
Well, I'm glad to have you with us today on the show. I was sharing with you before we started recording that these have fast become some of my favorite episodes to record, because I always love having the opportunity to share real women's stories. And I know that my clients really resonate with these episodes. And so before we jump into the session, part of our session, I'd love to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about your experience. When did you start menstruating? Did you use birth control before? And basically what led you to jump into the program at this stage?
Sure. So I think when I was about 12 was the first time that I got my period. And it seems like from what I've heard in some of your past stories, that I did have a very heavy period at that time, but I didn't take any contraceptives at that stage. I sort of just dealt with it in my younger years for however many years. I seems unlike some of the people that I've heard you speak to, didn't really ever take contraceptive in my whole journey. I took it probably when I was 21 for about 2 years, and then when I was about 30, I took Implanon for about a year, but I had a whole bunch of issues with it where I didn't get my period for 6 months, and then I got my period every 2 weeks for 6 months, and then it was just all over the place, and so I stopped taking it. But I feel like I did suffer quite a lot when I was younger from heavy period pain, and only when I was about 33 and I started trying naturally to conceive, and I was tried for about 12 months and then was unsuccessful. And given my age, the practitioners that I saw at the time told me that the sort of only option was to do IVF. So I started a course of IVF and did 2 rounds of that and was not successful. And then at the end of those 2 rounds, I was told by my specialist that I wasn't able to conceive. I wasn't able to have children because I had a very low egg count. So about 34, or maybe I was 35, I thought I wasn't actually able to have kids anymore. And I sort of processed that and dealt with that in my life. And then randomly at 37, I fell pregnant, which was completely unplanned and not in the right circumstances. So I had a termination, and then my whole sort of world, I guess, changed again because I realized that maybe there is a chance that I could have kids, and sort of started getting into really looking at all of this sort of stuff, and got onto you and sort of started doing the course. And I guess the only other thing that I did radically do at about 36 was I completely changed my diet and cut out dairy and gluten, and I actually wasn't doing it for this reason. I was doing it for health reasons, and I think that maybe that might have been one of the things that had an impact on me. But back in the day when I first started talking to people, no one ever told me that your diet could actually have an impact on what you do. That was sort of my journey, and now I'm with my partner that I actually did fall pregnant with, and we are wanting to try again, but I am now 38, so definitely got a lot more challenges for it to naturally happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for taking us through your journey. I always find it interesting. I'm sure you've heard this as well when you listen to the episodes. It's like you take us through 10, 15 years of your life in 2 minutes.
That's true. Yeah.
And if you stop to think about just everything that you said for a moment, how just devastating it would have been to have been trying to conceive as long as you had, to have unsuccessful IVF treatments that I'm sure were not free, and also to have been told that it's impossible for you to get pregnant, and then to have to deal with all of that, right? And then to have a pregnancy just randomly happen after many years after that, you know? So I feel like that's a lot to take in. I've always wondered, I mean, I think with physicians, they really have to be cautious. They don't want to be sued. And so often I kind of think what the motivations are. I think it's interesting to give that kind of a firm diagnosis, like you're officially infertile. If you're still ovulating, if you still have a menstrual cycle, just because they just are not quite sure why you're not conceiving, if that makes sense.
I think.
Have you reflected about that? I mean, you must have kind of had I'm just curious what you have kind of reflected, given that you were literally told that it couldn't happen and then it randomly did.
Yeah, I think now I have spent a lot of time thinking about that.
You don't say.
I think what the specialist was saying at the time is to conceive via IVF, I'm not going to be successful, because when you go through a round of IVF and they do the first part of growing your follicles and then extracting your follicles, they don't want to do that process, extraction, because it's more invasive unless you have a lot of follicles. And what I was not successful at is growing many follicles. So I think, and what he was actually saying is, unless I use a donor egg, I'm probably not going to be able to do IVF. So, but I think in his mind, falling pregnant naturally wasn't another option. And so I interpreted that as I can no longer have kids. I'd gone through 2 rounds of IVF and just sort of thought, well, this is my life now and I need to be thinking about other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense when you break it down that way. So in a sense, it was kind of an unspoken assumption that pregnancy naturally wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And since the IVF wasn't turning out to be effective in your case because of the limited ability to produce multiple follicles after stimulation, so then the message was basically like, there's no option here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my thought process.
Yeah. Because I mean, after something like that happens, you got to kind of like break it down for yourself, because if you're told that and it feels kind of final, it's like you kind of have to emotionally prepare yourself for that, put on some armor and just go about your life. And so the unexpected pregnancy kind of throws that for a loop, I suppose, of course.
Completely did. I'd felt like I'd had a year in my life of dealing with that, and then I moved countries from Australia to America and randomly fell pregnant 2 months after getting here. Like, wow, that wasn't prepared.
Yeah. So you mentioned that from when you started menstruating, you had heavy periods that were also quite painful, and hormonal birth control didn't really work for you, so you kind of had to manage that. So, currently, how are your periods? Like, how do you rate your pain and your heaviness typically when you're having periods now?
Well, when I changed I think my periods were always still quite heavy, and once a month, like that first day was pretty crippling and I wasn't able to pretty much function. But as I got a little bit older, in my sort of very early 30s, it wasn't as bad. But when I changed my diet a couple of years back now, that had a really big impact. And I remember the first time after, like maybe it was 2 or 3 months after changing my diet, I had my first period ever in my entire life where I had no pain at all. And it was amazing. And I was like, wow, look at what you can do if you do actually look at, what you are eating and consuming. And that was amazing. Since then, I have had a range of hormonal issues where I've been under a bit of stress. And for me, my periods is a direct indication of that stress. And so probably the last three months, a little bit, maybe 4 months, they've been incredibly light, maybe only 1 or 2 days and no pain at all. But I know that that's not necessarily the normal process. And I'm hoping this month will be the first month where they're back to normal. So I'll be able to share that with you, fingers crossed, in this course.
Yes. Well, it's stay tuned. We'll figure out what the next period is like. So the listeners can't see, but I'm going to open up your chart so we can take a look. So as we shift towards our session part of the call, let me know what you were hoping to talk about today, kind of what's at the forefront of your mind today.
The biggest one is although I feel confident of how I'm doing my temperatures in terms of the process, getting it reasonably consistent of the timing, keeping the thermometer in your mouth for 10 minutes, recording it every day, I have struggled to actually see the shift. And so really trying to understand that would be, like, I know the theory behind it, but I've never been able to look at my chart. Some of the charts you've shown me where it looks very easy. You can see that there are a series of days there is a lower temperature and then there is a shift and there is a higher. I feel that with mine, for a lot of my charts, I've never been able to see that. And I'm wondering if that's because I've had hormonal problems, or if it is there, I'm just not noticing it. So I guess that's the number one thing. And then the second thing is really just a bit more of a broader understanding on the mucus side of things as well. I think that's relatively new to me, more than the temperature.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at your chart. So I think what makes it challenging is that in your pre-ovulatory phase, in this chart anyways, you do have a couple of temperatures that are higher than the others, kind of randomly in the middle, and before what appears to be an actual shift. So whenever you're having temperatures that are kind of spiking up and down, it makes it a little bit more challenging. And I think that we had a session, because I have notes from our previous session in our group, and I was asking you all the questions to try to figure out, okay, so could it be this? Could it be that? And I think where we left it off was the question of could it be alcohol consumption? If you have a glass of wine or something, have you noticed if your temperature is kind of up or down? So I'm not sure that we would necessarily have an answer for that today, but the temperatures on what looks like day 10 and 11, to me, seem like they are high, but for no reason. Like they seem like outliers to me.
And sorry, I remember when we had this session and you mentioned that, I did go back and look at my other app of notes that I was taking, and they were actually weekend days, the 10th and 11th, I believe. And I think that I know I was traveling on those 2 days, and I was in Colorado, so a different sort of altitude at that point, and I might have taken them at a slightly different time during the day. So I wonder if maybe that was the reasoning for those 2 days.
Well,
so do you also
I was just going to say that those two things. So I always joke, anytime you're traveling, if you're in a different time zone or if you're on a plane at some point, either of those things can affect the temperature. And certainly, I'm not sure to the degree that a hotter climate will make a difference, but just being
colder. Sorry, it was colder climate.
Yeah,
you don't reckon that would? Okay.
Okay, yeah, I didn't. Okay, but either way, the travel and the possible time change and stuff like that could certainly, and often, maybe it's different for you, but often when you travel, your sleep isn't exactly the same. You're in a new place. It takes a couple of days, so that would qualify those two to be questionable, because we can't be 100% on those, at least. So what helps when you're trying to figure out the temperature stuff is to start kind of thinking about that, all the different things that could affect your temperature. We went over a long list, so it does include travel, time zone changes, possible alcohol consumption, allergies, and every woman is different, so what affects one woman won't necessarily affect another. The period temperatures, I think we talked about those. So when you're during, the first several days of your period, if the temperatures are kind of up and down, that's how they are. And we don't look at those. So if we ignore the kind of up and down period temperatures and then look at those temperatures on day 10 and 11 as questionable, then what we have is a pre-ovulatory temperature kind of area here that makes more sense.
So a couple of questions I have. What day is the day where it looks like that I ovulated, if given that being the case? Would it be day 14, 13, or 12?
So we're looking for the first day where your temperatures are higher than the previous 6 normal temperatures. So with that in mind, day 13 would be the day that I would put ovulation as an estimate. Day 14 is the first day that your temperatures are higher than the previous 6 normal, because I'm excluding the 2 temperatures on day 10 and 11. So day 10, the temp is 98.2. It's day 9 and 10. So day 9 and 10, your temperature is 98.2, which is typically kind of a higher pre-ov temp. It's not.
That's my second question. I feel like my temperature range seems to be a lot higher than other charts that I've seen. Like other charts seem to be sitting around a lot more around the 97, whereas my temperature's always a lot higher, and I'm
Well,
healthy.
your temperatures are actually within the normal range
Oh, are they?
in the sense
They
of,
seem higher.
so ideally your temperatures in your pre-ovulatory phase are going to be a bit higher than about 97.4, most of them. But a lot of
Hmm.
women's temperatures fall below that for various reasons. And so since we're in a group setting, we're seeing just a lot of different charts, a lot of different temperatures. And so, we do have some women in the group whose temperatures fall kind of closer to the line of 97.0. But when we see those charts and talk about them, we're also talking about the possible reasons why their temperatures are too low.
Okay, right. So you think I'm in the normal range, that my temperatures are good. Even the most recent, like I was almost at 98.5 yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, these are post-ovulatory temperatures. It's normal for post-ovulatory temperatures to go over 98 degrees. And let me see. And the reason that some of these temperatures, so when I'm taking a peek at your notes, so day
Hmm.
16, the temp is 98.47, day 15, 98.4, and you have some notes on day, what is this, day 16 and day 17, like you noted, like alcohol or whatever.
Hmm.
So, and then were those weekend days? I feel like,
Yes.
yeah. So, for example, even when you're in the post ovulatory phase, there's going to be your temperature is going to respond to if you're getting up a little bit later or if there's something that challenges your temperature. So, basically, I've looked at so many charts over the years that it's fairly easy for me to read which temperatures are likely out and which temperatures are likely not. And what I hope to, I suppose, help you to do is to start to really just recognize what things affect your temperatures. And those would be the things to note in your comments.
Hmm.
So, for example, if you typically get up a bit later on the weekend days, then you may want to start noting the time or just note that it was Saturday or it was Sunday.
Hmm.
Um,
Sure.
if you know that having a little bit of alcohol tends to raise the temp, which not all, it doesn't happen for all women. Some
It
women
looks
it
like it
does.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then some women it's like so much so, and then other women it's just a little bit more subtle. But
Hmm.
either way, as you start to identify what affects your temperature, then making those notes throughout on those days is what helps you to interpret it after. So I would actually put the temperature shift, like the first day of the shift, on day 14
Hmm.
because so it's the first temperature that is the first air quotes normal temperature that is higher than the previous 6 normal temperatures.
Hmm.
So, and if we
So,
were to take out a ruler, which, and actually you can adjust the baseline here. You can go into the app and adjust it. So the baseline is listed at 96. So you could actually move the baseline up to, let's say, like 97.9, 98.0,
okay.
just kind of right there. And if you do that, it would divide the chart and you would see that the majority of the pre-ovulatory temperatures outside of the period temperatures and the 2 outliers that we identified are below that line. And then afterwards, all of the temperatures are above that line. So it's a
Okay.
little challenging because of the things that we've identified, but we can still be fairly certain about the shift. And just one last thing I'll mention because I'm kind of going on about it. Uh, day 13, that's the day that I pegged ovulation based on your temperatures. And that also coincides with your peak day, the last day that
Hmm.
you saw mucus that was stretchy. And then after that, you had one day of the lotiony type mucus, and then you shifted to dry. So even though you may not feel as, it might not look as clear on your end, the shift that we identified, it does line up with the mucus pattern changing.
So based on that, should I have had sex on the 13th, not on the 14th then?
Well, you could have
Or
sex
should
on
I have
both
had it
days.
on the 12th? Okay. Or the
So,
12th?
well,
Because it,
you had mucus on day 11, day 12, day 13, and day 14. So
mhm.
sex could have, like, that's fair game all of those days.
Okay.
Yeah. So in that sense, so did you actually mark all of the days of sex on your chart?
Yeah, unfortunately, my partner wasn't around at that time.
Yeah.
He was away. So that were the only 2 days I had as an option.
Yes. And you're not alone in that. I've just over the years, I mean, our lives are busy depending on
Hmm.
where you work, where your partner works, sometimes just life in general. It's so common to, it's like, it's always around ovulation. Like, why can't you go away
And
during my period or something, right? Why is your work trip right now? But it seems to work that way a lot. From a practical standpoint, you want to time sex on your days of mucus, regardless. The more that you
hmm
chart, the more that you'll, I think we spoke about this last night. The more you chart, the more you'll get accustomed to what your mucus patterns look like, what it looks like when you're in your fertile window, and how that differs from when you're outside of it. So just to really help you identify that.
hmm
And it really sucks, but it can be helpful to know that. So yes, in this cycle, you did miss kind of like the optimal days in a sense.
hmm
And it's possible because the temperature rose on day 14, the temperature rise happens the day after ovulation. So yeah, it's possible that you missed kind of like the optimal time,
hmm
but that's how life works sometimes. And
mm
you know that. And so, in terms of timing, my recommendation is then to have sex on your days of mucus leading up to ovulation and to keep having sex until you can confirm it. So, keep having
Every
sex
day?
until, I mean, it depends, right? Life gets in the way. It doesn't have to be every single day. But when you do see a day of peak, try to hit that day.
Hmm.
Like when you see a day of clear or stretchy or it's lubricative, try to hit that day. And then just in case you ever have a cycle where you have, say, a double peak where you have mucus and then it goes away, but then it comes back because you didn't actually ovulate that time, we just want to kind of make sure that we don't accidentally miss the opportunity. You just want to keep it in your mind. Like if you see mucus, have sex, and then just, have sex the day after, just in case, just to confirm that you actually did, like your temperature is shifting, that your mucus is going away, just to confirm that you actually hit the ovulation point.
hmm Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard thing because even if you didn't hit the day, because you are trying to conceive, if your period comes at the end of it, you still feel the same level of disappointment, even if you didn't hit the days. So I've worked with clients who it's like the same thing. Their partners travel a lot, and they might even go 2 cycles where their partner was literally just away during that window. But
Hmm.
each of those months in their mind is a try, even though like there was technically no sex in that window.
Yeah, I think for me, because I know that I know that my hormones are not right at the moment. I haven't really been thinking that I'm going to conceive until I get those balanced back out. So in December, the start of December, I got them tested, and I had a massive range of estrogen dominance, and so I've been trying to, for December, January, and February, like change eating certain types of food that will help rebalance my hormones, trying to meditate more, do yoga more, just knowing that I don't think that I'm going to be able to fall pregnant if my hormones aren't in balance. But do you think that that's the case or not?
Well, I think that pregnancy is possible in any cycle where you have ovulation.
Mm-hmm.
And when your body is ready, conception happens. So it's not this, conception isn't necessarily this logical thing. I think we're often tempted to think that everything has to be absolutely perfect. My cycle has to be perfect. My hormones have to be perfect. My diet has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect or I won't conceive. And that's not necessarily the case. There's multiple factors at play for a successful pregnancy. So, one is having healthy eggs, having healthy cervical fluid to filter out the abnormal sperm. One is having healthy sperm, and the other is having a healthy body, a place where, that will easily allow conception, fertilization, implantation to happen and for everything to be successful. So I think that I mean, I've worked with clients that did have certain issues, and they kind of would it just didn't occur to them that it could happen until XYZ was fixed. But then it happened because their body was ready, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So there's often more to it than just having everything perfect. I think that we spoke a little bit of one of the questions that I asked, I think, remind me, has your partner's sperm, oh yeah, I asked you if your partner's sperm had been tested and you said it was done a year ago and you were told that everything's normal. And I think I asked if you were able to grab a hold of those results so that we could go through them. Were you able to grab them?
I actually, yeah, no, I haven't been successful in that. Sorry. I completely forgot.
No, it's okay. Well, now that we have the reminder, because we still have another hot seat and another one-on-one session together in the program. So maybe just jot that down and see if you can get a hold of that so that we can look at it. I think it's really, especially when you know that you have challenges conceiving already, it's really important just to really cover all those bases. And pretty much every client that I've worked with has told me that who's done a sperm analysis has told me that they've been told that it's normal, but I've yet to see a sperm analysis that is optimal in all areas in any of my clients who are trying to conceive. So normal means that it meets the World Health Organization criteria, which are quite low: 4% morphology, 15 to 20 million sperm per milliliter concentration, and I believe somewhere around 50% motility. But the optimal range is a lot different to that. So it's helpful just to know that it's possible to conceive if your partner's sperm is in that suboptimal range, but it often takes significantly longer because you have a lower chance per cycle of conception. Yeah. And interestingly, even if the count is really high, and I had this question in my Facebook group just the other day, and even if the count is really high, I've noticed a tendency for practitioners, like if they see this count of like 80 million sperm per milliliter or something like that, and the morphology is like 2 or 3%, they'll say, wow, the count is so high, and not even look at the morphology and tell you that everything is totally fine. But what that means in real terms is that if the morphology is 3%, 3 out of every 100 of those sperm are normal. And so that definitely plays a role in just the chance. So it's still possible to conceive, but the percent chance per cycle goes down when you have an issue like that. So we got to look at those numbers, Angie.
Okay, sure.
Just because one of the things that's really frustrating for a lot of my clients is that they've been beating their heads against the wall, eating all of the supplements, changing their diet, doing everything, getting all of the treatments from all the practitioners. And then we realize that their partner could do something to improve their sperm. This kind of thing wastes months of your life because it takes a minimum of 3 to 4 months to start seeing a result, an improvement in that sperm result.
Sure. No, okay, great. I'll get those.
All right. Well, you had the questions about temperature. I think that, I've given you a bit of homework in the sense of now we know a few things that obviously affect your temperature and a few things that you can start noting on the chart, like the time that you wake up and any travel or anything like that, as well as alcohol consumption. And we'll just kind of wait and see if there are other factors that seem to also impact the temperature. Hopefully that will help you to interpret it a little bit, but of course it's still a process. So we'll kind of sort it out. And how are you in terms of observing mucus and everything? When I'm looking at your chart, it looks like you're doing pretty good with the notations. How are you feeling with just all of that, the mucus aspect of charting?
I think the biggest question I have is I often find when I wipe, I don't have mucus, but there is often mucus on my underwear. So, for example, on the last 2 entries, I felt like I had a sensation of smooth, but there was nothing on the toilet paper after wiping. But there was mucus on my underwear, and I could pick it up and finger test it. And to me, it seemed like it was whatever the 6PC criteria is.
I wanted to jump into today's episode to invite you to join us for the next round of Fertility Awareness Mastery Live. This 8-week group coaching program is designed to help you unlock the secrets of your menstrual cycle. Fertility Awareness Mastery teaches you everything you need to know about using fertility awareness cycle tracking to achieve your intentions, whether you're currently trying to get pregnant, avoiding pregnancy, or planning to conceive in the future, we've got you covered. This program goes deep. Get to the root of your period problems, hormone imbalances, fertility challenges, and so much more. But don't wait too long. Early bird registration is now open, but only for a limited time. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/FAM, FAM, to register today. That's fertilityfriday.com/FAM. Now let's go ahead and jump back into today's episode.
So I guess the question I have for you is, should I be doing that or should I be not doing that?
Well, my general recommendation for kind of how to manage underwear observations is when you're wiping, if you are in fact wiping throughout the day all day, so you're wiping before and after you go to the bathroom, those things, and throughout the day you're basically seeing like a dry or smooth sensation, feeling that, and not seeing anything on the actual toilet paper that you can pick up. If you do see something in your underwear that is lotiony, then my suggestion is to write that in the comments and not on the chart.
And so would I, sorry.
And then if you're in, because this was also in your post-ovulatory phase. If you're in your like approaching ovulation, if you see mucus that is clear and stretchy on your underwear, you always have to mark that because that's, so I kind of draw that line in the sand. That's my recommendation there.
Okay, so then technically the last 2 days on my chart, I should have probably had a green dot. Would I still say smooth sensation or would I technically say dry?
Yeah, you would say smooth sensation. Okay. And then when you're marking dry, you would note whether the toilet paper was shiny, whether there was nothing on the toilet paper, or whether the toilet paper was kind of damp.
Okay. Sure. That's actually my biggest question that I had. So probably the couple of days where I've got the pale purple outside of the sort of the ovulation days, they should have probably been green dots then.
Well, yeah, that's because when you do the way of checking mucus with wiping, one of the reasons for that method, you could say, is to help you to determine the difference between your true mucus days and your true dry days. And so, and to help you determine the difference also between your vaginal cell slough. So, I mean, it's fairly common for us to have an observation of something on the underwear. And so for anyone listening, if you've ever seen kind of like that white kind of layer or crustiness on the underwear, or if it's like kind of yellowy, that's typically your vaginal cell slough. And that term just refers to the normal shedding of your vagina, the cells in your vagina, because your vagina is filled with skin and all of our skin cells shed up, on a regular basis. And so that's just something to help us to kind of make that distinction. So typically when it's truly mucus, if you're actually checking all day throughout the day, it's going to show up on that toilet paper. So just something to think about. But definitely like write it in the comments so that you have that information there, and then we could certainly take a peek. I find that writing it in the comments when it shows up on your underwear helps you to differentiate the difference between your true mucus and then your cell slough.
That makes a lot of sense. So I guess the other thing on the mucus then is if I'm having sex during my ovulation period, I feel like I'm going to find the actual observation of the mucus harder. So because of working out what's semen versus what's mucus, should I be during that time be doing the technique that you discussed with us in the masterclass about trying to get all the semen out of me so that I'm actually able to truly observe my mucus?
That is basically the best way for you to make that clear observation the day after sex. And so it seems counterintuitive when you're trying to conceive. It's something that you wouldn't get up right after sex or anything. You can still kind of, I think that when we're trying to conceive, most of us kind of do the thing where you kind of put your bum in the air and your feet up because you kind of want to hold the semen in. So about 15 or 20 minutes after sex, you could get up and you just go to the bathroom, which is a good thing to do after sex anyways. to clear the urethra, to reduce the risk of UTIs, just as general information. And then as you go to the bathroom, you just kind of like allow the semen to fall out and then continue to like engage your muscles and wipe until it's basically gone. So the reason that you would do that is to, when you eliminate the semen after sex, then the following day, you're able to actually identify what's going on. So if it's truly a dry day, it's dry. And if it's truly a mucus day, there's mucus. And I've had women ask me, you know, is that birth control? Because if you get up and go to the bathroom and then you get rid of all the semen. But our cervical fluid has these amazing channels that rapidly transport sperm into the cervical crypts and into the uterus and the fallopian tubes. And this happens within like minutes. So by the time your partner has ejaculated inside of your body, when they do, I found a few studies that I quoted in the Fifth Vital Sign where they actually found semen in the fallopian tubes within, 5 minutes. So what I always say is that when you're trying to conceive, if you're hitting all the right days and it's not happening, it's not because you didn't lay down on your back long enough after sex. There's something else going on that we should really be looking at. And if we do find that there's an issue with sperm quality, for example, that could be interfering with your chances of conception, unless you have trapeze in your bedroom that like you can hang upside down and keep that sperm right next to your cervix, then laying in bed longer and putting your feet up in the air isn't a really effective strategy in order to improve your chances of conception. If there's an issue with sperm quality, because that's typically what the issue would be if you're actually hitting the days and it's not happening. When you know that you have a lower count, your partner has a lower count, or your partner has like morphology issues, so there's just overall fewer healthy sperm to fertilize, then you really want to look into something that would actually be more effective. So what I'm saying is laying there longer isn't going to increase your chances of conception. Also, if you've ever had sex with like a male, even if you try to lay back, half of the semen kind of falls out anyways, So in one of our upcoming sessions, one of the things that I talk about also in the Fifth Vital Sign is cervical cap insemination. So this is kind of like the thing that you can do at home, like before you go to IUI. But basically the concept behind it, a cervical cap sits on your cervix. So it kind of goes like around your cervix. So if you know that there's a legitimate issue with your partner's sperm and you know that, okay, I'm going to have to do something to try to prolong the time that the sperm is exposed to my cervical mucus to improve the odds that more of the good healthy sperm are going to get through. Basically what the cervical cap insemination is, your partner somehow ejaculates into this thing and you put it in, you insert it into your vagina and you actually put it over your cervix. And something like that actually allows the cervix to like sit in the semen for 6 hours, thus prolonging the duration of time the sperm would have access to the mucus and actually give a shot to have more of those good guys getting through, because our mucus is actively filtering out the poor sperm. So what I'm saying is, like, if there's a legitimate issue, we should have a legitimate solution for it. And the technique, like the getting rid of the sperm, isn't going to reduce your chances of conceiving. Because if there's a real issue, we got to come up with a real solution. So that plus actually addressing the sperm issue and doing some things to help him improve his sperm quality. But we don't even know if that's an issue at this stage.
Yeah.
So a long answer to a short question, but does that kind of help?
Definitely does. Thank you very much for that.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I would say like 15, 20 minutes after.
Okay.
After sex.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll give that a go.
Sounds good.
Cycle.
Well, I mean, we've covered a lot today. Before we wrap up, did you have any last minute questions for me?
No, that's all been so helpful. Thank you so much for everything. It's been great.
Awesome. Well, you're welcome. So a few questions for you. I mean, for a woman who's listening to this episode today and she's trying to decide if the program is right for her, like if the Fertility Awareness Mastery Group program is right for her, she's kind of thinking about it, but she's not really sure what she's going to learn from it. What would you have to say to her?
Good question. I guess I was aware, I'd read your book and I'd listened to your podcast prior, but I guess the biggest thing I'm getting from it is the one-on-one interaction to sort of talk through the specifics that we've talked through, like how I should be charting my mucus or where my temperature shift actually is. So I guess it's more in-depth knowledge about the things that you're trying to do with an expert like yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because I do my best to put out so much information. But what I find with my clients, I mean, with everybody, is that you want to know specifically what's happening with you. Like you want to have insight onto into your specific situation, because even though you can get all the general information, it's like hard to piece it together sometimes, especially if you have some challenges with your cycle or with what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and a lot of women who, oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was about just saying, absolutely.
Well, a lot of women who are listening are also somewhere on their own journey. I know a lot of listeners just find this podcast when maybe they've had some side effects on birth control, or they're just, maybe they're not ready even to start trying right now, but they know they want kids at some point. So they're wanting to kind of figure this stuff out ahead of time. What advice would you have for a woman who isn't necessarily ready to start trying right now, but maybe she's on birth control, maybe she's not, but she's planning to start in a couple of years?
Get us informed. I wish I had this knowledge when I was 12. So I would just say get as informed as you can now, so that when you are ready to try, it's not however many years or learning curve after you're ready. So really find out everything you need to know now and get yourself prepared, so when you are ready, you're actually ready. You're not at that point where now it's like, okay, I'm ready, and however many years later I finally get myself together, which is a long journey. So I just wish I was taught this in school and I was educated, but unfortunately I wasn't, and it was a bit too late for me.
Well, you're certainly not alone in that. And I do appreciate you for sharing your story so openly. Even it was interesting. I mean, I think one of the parts of your story that really stands out to me is that you were, looking to just improve your diet for health and things like that. It just so happened to revolutionize your period, and you accidentally became pregnant after being told that you couldn't. And not that it was a simple or easy thing, but just to speak to that power of, or the connection even between our overall health, our fertility, our cycles. And you said at some point that your cycles are kind of like a direct expression of what's happening. And that is, I think, the power of charting. It's kind of like the thing that happens. You come to charting for the specifics. I want to know when to have sex to get pregnant. I want to know how to avoid pregnancy without hormones. But what happens is you end up uncovering this really interesting connection between your cycles and your health. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing that with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend. You'll find the show notes page for today's episode over at fertilityfriday.com/304. I hope that you enjoyed today's reality series episode with Angie. I really love doing the on-air client sessions. I don't like to say I pick favorites, but the reality series episodes are some of my favorite episodes to do. It gives me an additional opportunity to connect with my clients, and one of the things that it allows me to do as well is to share with you some of the stories that I hear all the time. These are the types of conversations that I'm always having with clients in my work. And it's one of the things that I think is really important as women is to start to recognize what's normal, what's typical, because if you're experiencing different cycle challenges, different things are happening, and perhaps you're not necessarily talking to your friends about it, because as much as we go on and on about fertility awareness and the menstrual cycle on this podcast, most women don't have an outlet to talk about all of these very personal and kind of TMI details on a regular basis. So a lot of women who experience these challenges really feel isolated. And that was a theme that has come out in the current group program that I'm doing, where a lot of the women had experienced certain things and really thought that they were alone. And it was kind of like, once I discovered your podcast, I realized that it's not just me. There's lots of women who are experiencing this. So for some of you who have been listening for a long time, some of you who do similar work with clients, in our worlds, this is something that we're talking about all the time. This is something that we see on a regular basis. But for your average woman, it's still something that she's not talking about all the time, that she's not necessarily talking to her friends about, or doesn't necessarily have a safe space to talk about these topics and ask these kind of taboo questions. And so that's just one of the reasons why I love sharing these episodes with you, because if you go back and listen to, a whole bunch of the reality series episodes, you'll really hear that. You'll hear that so many women are in a similar situation to you. If you're thinking about coming off birth control, if you've ever had issues with your cycle, if you have recently come off birth control and your cycles are a little bit wonky and you're going through that transitional phase, it just helps to normalize your experiences so that you really know that you're not alone. And so if you're ready to take your experience of charting to the next level, if you're ready to jump in to Fertility Awareness Mastery Live and just dive into charting and immerse yourself in fertility awareness for a couple months together so that you can really come out the other side confident and knowledgeable about the method, ready to use it and to have this amazing tool and resource for the rest of your life, make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/FAM so that you can join us in May when we start our next round. So again, that's fertilityfriday.com/FAM. So I want to thank you for spending some time with us today. We will be talking about today's episode in the Fertility Friday Facebook community. So make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/community to join us in there. And if you know somebody who you think, you were thinking of somebody that when you were listening to this episode and she could really benefit from it, make sure to send over the link. So fertilityfriday.com/304. And of course, thank you so much for tuning into the show, for sharing the podcast and the episodes with your friends, for being a part of the Fertility Friday community. And of course, as always, until next time, be well and happy charting.